I go by Alexandria, and my other names are Monque Ravanel, but I prefer Alexandria. It was supposed to be Monique, so that French name. My sister's second name is Monica, so my mother wanted us to have same names. But on the birth certificate, my mom forgot to put the I in Monique, so it became Monque. Because my last name, my surname Ravanel, is a very big name in South Carolina. So in the Charleston area, there's a community called Ravanel. And so it's a name that you hear in the white community and the black community. I hardly use it because I don't want to be associated with either in the same way, that slave culture and history. So I don't use it as often. Oh yeah, my parents were part of the Great Migration. My parents were born, both of them, in Charleston, South Carolina. The story as I know it is that the enslaver brought my family from Louisiana to Charleston. And then my parents grew up in the 40s. And so they were around for Jim Crow South, and they just wanted to make a better life. So they were probably at the tail end of the Great Migration. And so we were born in New York and Brooklyn and then raised in Queens. And I just remember the South in the summer times going to visit. And my parents used to tell us not to cross, my grandmother mainly told us not to cross this particular line in Charleston, because the other side of that line was the white area. We weren't supposed to cross there. And that's the only thing I knew, that we were supposed to stay in our place. So on the weekends, my dad used to take me to the Met, and we would sit there and draw and paint, and I was a part of different programs. And so I was around art all of the time from a very young age. So to me, art is a fundamental need. I can't imagine my life without it, whether I'm doing it or just engaged in it. It's a part of my culture, a part of who I am. So on one of those visits to the Metropolitan Museum of Art, we were supposed to copy a Renaissance painting. And when I did mine, I decided to use bright, bold colors. And the instructor of that class told me I was wrong, that my art was wrong because it needed to look like, Rembrandt. And I remember holding that as her truth and not as my own. And I wasn't discouraged by it. By this time, I was told no a lot, and you're not doing it right, or you have to do it harder, work harder, that sort of thing. And I just remember how in love I was with the piece of art that I created, and how it was an expression of myself and feeling worthy of being in such a place like the Met. It's intimidating, right? And I didn't see anybody, not many people who looked like me. And so I've held that moment as my moment, and my ability to be able to express myself through art. And she couldn't control that. Nobody could control that. And so for me, I didn't even realize I was participating in something that would later be healing for me. Art is a means of expression. Art is a means of taking what is living inside of my body, the experience that I'm having, and putting it on paper. For me, it's writing, or putting it on canvas, or putting it on a keyboard. To get those traumas, those experiences out of our bodies and into some form of expression that lives outside of the body is essential, right? And so when it lives outside of our bodies, then it can be, worn by, or looked at, or heard, or seen by other people. And then I think at that point, it facilitates healings in those persons, and maybe gets them to then engage in art, either as a consumer or a producer, to facilitate the healing process within themselves. So I don't know any other means than art that is, I would say, the great influencer. It's the thing that moves people's hearts before it moves their minds. And so if it can move your heart, then maybe it's going to change your mind. And if it changes your mind, then it's going to change policies and create opportunities for other things to happen. And that's the power of art. That's the power of using art as a healing tool as well. Because I think about the ways that I can get in my own way, and how my thinking can sometimes shift my own trajectory. But when I start to write, when I get back into my creative self and my art, I can start moving that energy and start changing my own mind even, and that's healing too. We need more spaces of our own. We need more spaces that we can call our own, where we can be free to be ourselves and not be monitored or policed. Places where we don't have to beg to be who we are, to be recognized, to be seen. So I had a conversation this morning, and I'm feeling quite emotional about it. But the simplest way I could explain it is, if we think about what we call the historic Black communities in Asheville, we understand the story of how they came to be. We understand, my parents left the segregated South, right, in order to find new way of being in New York. We think about how these communities came to be, but we also need to think about that they came to be a community because of segregation, because they weren't allowed to be other places. And when they were segregated, they made magic. They made ways out of no way, right? Nobody was giving them anything. Nobody was changing policy in order for them to exist being Black or a person of color, right? They figured it out for themselves. And I just keep now imagining, what would it be like if we came together and created more of our own spaces? Like, Noir Collective is Noir Collective. It does not need to be the only one. I would love to see, and it doesn't have to be called Noir Collective, I'd love to see more spaces like this all over our city. Opportunities for us to be in a space where we just feel fully ourselves. I know the city's in the reparations process. That's a conversation, right? And one of the conversational topics is, what do we do about land that was taken away? Like, imagine if that land was returned. And I think the challenge with returning the land is that the people who now own the land need to be able to recognize that they got that land through means that was they have stolen property, basically. And for them to be able to recognize that. And what do you do when you know you have stolen property? Do you covet it? Do you keep it? Do you use it for your own advantage, or do you give it back? The kid who takes the thing in the candy store, they're made to take that candy back. And I know that's a small, it's not a fair comparison, but I still think about, what would it be like for people to give back what was taken and see what could happen? For us to see what we can do with it. And I think that the art facilitates the imagination. It facilitates the process where we can then begin to reimagine what it is we can create for ourselves. That's what art does. So we need more of that. We need more opportunity to draw and to paint and to sing and to dance and to move together. Just that first, and from that, I think, emerges their creativity and then the hope, right?